Hi, my name is Jill Van Dijvendyk, and today we are going to be talking about tropicals and general tropical care. Now, tropicals are one of the biggest trends in gardening right now, and through the pandemic, everybody has sort of adopted these little plant babies, and some people are having success and some people are having troubles, and I'm seeing connections develop between older plant parents and younger plant parents and new plant parents. We're starting to develop a little community here. So I want to dive right into some tips and tricks that we can teach you to be successful in parenting your houseplants. So first off, we're going to start with how do I choose the right houseplant? Well, first thing we need to know how much light you have in the area. So if you have a south or west facing window and the plants can be within 3-4 feet, you have a highlight area. If you have an east or a north facing window and the plants are near a window, you might have an indirect sun area. Anything that's more than 8 feet away from a window, we call that indirect light. If it's even further than 10 feet away, that is low light. Anything in a room without a window, that plant is not getting any nutrients from the light, and eventually it would deteriorate over time. So you'll need to supplement it with a grow light, otherwise you just basically have a long-term floral arrangement. So if you're choosing your plant, there's 3 categories. We have low light, bright indirect light, and highlight or bright light. So there's no such thing as a plant that likes no light. So just want to clarify that if you're having trouble picking the right plant for the area. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're watering your plant correctly. And most plants, they like to dry out slightly between watering. So the biggest rule of thumb I have, or rule of finger rather, is take your finger and stick it into the soil up to your first or second knuckle and wait for the soil to feel dry to the touch before you're watering. This will be really important depending on the type of pot that you have. So when I'm watering my plants, I'll have a few different types of pots. I'll either have a pot with drainage like this one here, and usually I have a saucer under to catch any of the excess water, or I have a pot without drainage, and that means there's no hole in the bottom of the pot. Pots without drainage, you want to be really careful on how much you're watering your plants. So there's a few ways that you can water them. You can pour water into the bottom of the container, and then you can sort of set your plant in and let it soak up the water from the bottom and then empty any excess water out. So that's one way you can do it. We call this a pot-in-pot method. So instead of planting it right in here, you would do it that way. The other way is making sure that you either use a moisture meter and stick it down deep into the container, making sure that those roots are not saturated all the time and they're getting drying out a little bit. The next thing you can do is when you're watering in a plant without a container, you want to make sure you're sticking your finger down a little bit further and you want it to be drying out in there, or else you're going to get bacteria and all sorts of buildup in there. The other thing when you're planting, you want to put pebbles in the bottom of your pot. So I would just put a few pebbles in the bottom, then put a layer of charcoal, then my soil and my plant, and that will help eliminate any bacteria growth and help your plant thrive a lot better. So when I'm choosing my plant, like this little fern here, plant without a pot, I will choose a pot that's around the same size and just set that in there, and that plant's going to be way more successful. Whereas this plant with drainage, I'll just pop it out of the pot, nice healthy root system. You've got some nice sort of whitish roots there. Pop it in here, add a little bit of extra soil to top it up, just like so. And I will usually, when I plant up a pot, I'll just leave it so that you've got about a ½ inch of extra room so that when you're watering it, the water has room and it's not spilling over the top. Then if you want to top dress with maybe a couple rocks or a little bit of moss, you can do that as well. All right, so we have some other things that you need. Now, like us, we need food, and if you go to a pet store and you buy a little puppy or buy a little pet or a fish, what do you leave with? You leave with food for your pet. So our plants need food as well. So we have a few different types of food that we can give you. This one is one of my favorites, the Schultz plant food. You just do 7 drops in a liter of water. Every time you water, it will give your plant enough nutrients. Now, cactus and succulents don't need much fertilizer, if not any fertilizer in the winter season. But right now, our daylight hours are getting a little bit more, so you can switch to a cactus food. It's a very low nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium are your numbers on here, and it's a very low nitrogen food, and this will be great for your cactuses. Another common thing that we have right now is people will see fruit flies, or they call Fungusgnats, flying around in their plants. This is a very common problem, and it's not something that's going to harm your plants, but it's more of a nuisance. There's a few ways you can get rid of them. First off, what I usually will do is I'll take an apple or a potato and I'll cut it up into pieces, and before I go to bed I'll set that on the surface of the soil. What that's going to do is it's going to draw all the larva stage up to the surface of the soil, and it will then in the morning you can remove that top half inch of soil, and then you'll get rid of the larva stage. Now to get rid of the adults, I'll take these little sticky traps and I'll stick them in my plant, and they will attract the adults and get rid of them as well. I'll sometimes take my vacuum and go through and do a good vacuum and get rid of them. Fungusgnats are they love to live in an environment that's moist. So if you increase your airflow in that area, you will have less Fungusgnats. If you decrease your watering on your plant so that the soil is not saturated all the time, you will not have as much trouble as Fungusgnats. So if you have any questions about this, make sure you stop in. This is another cool product that we have too. It's a little apple, and you can just set this out on your counter or near your plants and put the little sugar juice in there, and it will attract the Fungusgnats and trap them in the little apple too. So there's lots of cute different ways that you can do it. We were talking about light before, and supplement light, you can get all different types of grow lights. You can even get grow lights that you can screw right into a normal light socket. So grow lights are great. Remember, light is food for your plants, so make sure that you are giving them enough light. Very, very important. While we're talking about pests, in my toolkit at home, I always have this product called Endol. Endol is a safer soap product, and it has canola oil in it. So it's going to coat those little eggs and those adult bugs, and it's going to get rid of spider mite, mealybug, aphids, all of those different little pesky bugs. Now remember, all plants will have bugs, and this is completely normal. So if you're a plant parent, you are going to have bugs. I have kids, and they get bruises and bumps and sores and infections all the time, and I just need to have the right medicine for them. So make sure you have some good insecticidal soap or Endol in your toolkit. And when I'm checking my plants, I'll go every 10 days, I'll check my plants, I'll give a little tour through them, and I'll look through the underside of the leaves and the overside leaves and check out little crevices, see if I see anything. If I do, I'll give them a nice little spray of the Endol, and then you can repeat that every 10 days. If you have any creepy crawlies in your soil, a lot of our plants, we just got a huge shipment in from Florida, and a lot of our plants will be grown in the ground. So sometimes you'll have a centipede in there and things like that. If you don't want those in the house, we have this diatomaceous earth. You can sprinkle it on the soil, and it will get rid of those little creepy crawlies that might be in your soil. Talking about soil, there's a few different types of soil that I like to use on my houseplants. This Pro Mix variety is one of my favorites because it has a wetting agent in it, so it's going to dry evenly from top to bottom. It's got lots of perlite in it, which is a little white flecks, so it's going to give some air to the roots, and it's just a great organic mix of soil. So we have two different types, one for cactuses and succulents, and the other one for just your regular tropicals. So it's really important you get the right one. For your cactus and succulents, it will probably have about 1/3 more of that perlite and sand in it, and that will help your plants drain a lot better. Now getting into the fun stuff, we're going to talk about some of the plants that I have here. Some of my favorite low light, easy care plants are this snake plant here. Now snake plant were actually just classified to be Dracaenas and not Sansevierias anymore, which is kind of a weird thing that we're seeing, that plants used to be classified based on how they reproduce, so the flower of the plants, and now we're finding that we have more genetic information about the plants, so a lot of plants are getting reclassified. So that's a kind of a cool fun fact. But there's so many different varieties of the Sansevieria snake plant. This one here, I've had in a room in my house with absolutely no light, and it's deteriorating a little bit. I've had it for about 6 years in there, but it is doing really well considering I have no light. So if you want a long-term floral arrangement of a plant in a room, the snake plant is easy care. It can go from low light to bright indirect light, and it will thrive in your environment. If you wanted to put this one outside in the summertime, just make sure you put it in a shady location, so a north or an east location there. Monsteras. Look at these beautiful leaves on this Monstera. Absolutely fabulous plant. It will grow fast, so make sure you're pruning it every once in a while, and you can even put a moss pole in the middle and have it grow up nice and big. Now with the Monsteras, these ones like indirect light to low light areas, and they like to dry out quite a bit between watering. So make sure you stick your finger down quite far before you're watering, or you see the leaves sort of start to cup or buckle, and that's when you know it's time to water it. So these guys here, definitely an Instagram favorite. I love, love, love the Swiss cheese look of the Monsteras. We talked about the little ferns earlier when we were repotting, but these guys here like bright indirect area, and they like high humidity. So let's talk a little bit about humidity. So our homes in the wintertime, we have furnaces, and in the summertime we have air conditioner units that dry out our homes. So we're wanting to add a little bit of humidity, and we can do that in a few ways. We can do it with a misting bottle, so just misting them, and maybe doing that about once a week. When you are misting, you're not soaking your plants with the mister, you're just misting them enough that that water is going to evaporate off the surface of the leaves within about 30 seconds. So it's a very light mist. The other thing that we can do is we can create a pebble tray. And I have a little saucer right here. This one's a ceramic saucer. And I have some rocks, and I'm going to dump the rocks onto the saucer. And then I'm just going to take my plants and just set them on the rocks. And what that does is the rocks bring it up, so when I add water to the pebble tray, the water's evaporating around the plant, but the plant's not sitting in the water. And this is a great way to add humidity to your plants. Now the other thing is plants feed off of each other. So in the winter season, I like to group my plants together. If we have a nice drafty window, pull them away from the window a little bit so that they can be grouped together. They'll get a little bit of heat and more humidity from each other. They love, love, love that. These little guys here, I love the color, and you will see these in our annual department in the spring, but they are actually a house plant, and these are the Polka Dot Plant, and these guys here are super, super cute, and you can pinch them. So when I pinch the plants, I'll just take out the center of them, and that will help them get a lot bushier. So I love the nice color that you have, and if you wanted to, you could do a little combination planting. So if I wanted to take a little fern and a little polka dot plant and pop it in together, I'm just getting a nice little bit of color. So remember, you don't necessarily have to have one type of plant in a pot, just same types of plants that require the same amount of water. You got the polka dot plant and then this nice fern. This is going to thrive together in this pot, and it looks nice and pretty, and you got this nice contrast in color. This guy over here, another one of my favorites, he is called a cordyline. And these cordyline, inside they can take a bright sunny area, outside a shady area. If you have too much sun on these, you'll actually start to see the tips start to turn brown on them. And that's another thing that I get a question I get a lot is, Jill, I see that the tips of my plants have started to just turn a little bit brown. That can be one of two things. Either you're watering it too much or not watering it enough, but most commonly we have chlorine in our water. So what will happen is you'll get burning on the tips. To stop that, or to make it so that it's not doing that as much, you can fill your watering can up and let it sit for about 24 to 48 hours. That chlorine's going to evaporate out, and then you're not going to get that brown tipping on the edge. But I love the beautiful color of the cordylines. We have them in a bright green, and later on in the season we'll get them in a bright pinkish red as well. Beautiful, beautiful plants. This guy here, one of my favorites, its name is Croton Petra, and he has nice, beautiful, bright leaves, and you'll get more vibrant colors the more sunlight you give it. The leaves on a croton come in all different shapes and sizes. We have about 14 different varieties of croton. Petra is one of my favorites with the nice, bright leaves. This guy here likes to, again, go dry in between waterings and then loves the bright, bright light. Aloe Vera. So summer is coming, and we're all going to start getting ready to get outside and enjoy the sun. Sometimes that means that we're going to get a little bit of a sunburn, and aloe vera has little juice inside of it that is great as a natural moisturizer and helps heal burns. So I love having some aloe vera on hand as sort of a little medicinal plant, but also it is a great easy care plant. Likes to go dry, dry, dry. It's in the succulent family. As you saw, there's lots of juice that's in these leaves. That's water that plant is holding. So do not water this plant very often. Allow it to go completely dry in between waterings, and you'll be happy. A little rule of thumb with my succulents is if I feel the leaves and they feel nice and firm, once they get soft like the tip of my nose, that's when it's time to water them. Next up, I have this money tree. And money trees you'll usually see planted in a little bit more of a woody mixture. They're noted as a plant of good luck, so you'll see them a lot of times around Chinese New Year's like we just had. And easy growing plant that loves the bright indirect light to full sun areas. I just love this plant. It's a very unique, modern looking plant. This one's been braided from the bottom, and a very nice, neat, modern plant, easy to care for. One of my most popular plants is the Pothos, or Devil's Ivy, and we have this in lots of different colors. So this one here is a golden pothos, and it's starting to grow up on what we call this totem. So this is a way that you can grow this plant. So usually you'll see this one in a hanging basket, but maybe you wanted to have it as a floor plant. So we've just put a stake in the middle, and then as it grows up, we'll actually tie it up, and it will continue to grow up nice and columnar. So it's not going to take up as much room in the house. Easy care for. Again, with this guy, allowed to dry slightly between waterings, and this one likes indirect to low light. Another plant of Instagram is the Fiddle Leaf Fig. And Fiddle Leaf Figs, this guy's just a little baby, so cute. He loves the bright light. So if you have a south or west facing window, this is a plant for you. If you maybe more have an east or a north facing window or a room with not much light, I'd maybe stick with something else. But this guy here will love, easy care for. Stick your finger in the soil, allowed to go dry to the touch. As you can see, we've allowed this one to go quite dry, and that's what they love. Every once in a while with these guys, I'll give them a turn every couple days, and that will keep the leaves growing nicely all around. Otherwise, you'll find that they'll start growing towards the window. So if you give them a little bit of a turn, that's great. As of any figs, they don't like to be moved from one area of the room to another. They don't like to be moved at all, but giving them a little turn, they love that. An Eureka Palm. So this guy here is an Eureka Palm, and I'm just going to shuffle some stuff over. Eureka Palms, I love that they sort of will fill a space. This one here can get up to 12 feet tall, and they do well in sort of a bright indirect light to a bright light area in your home, and I love sort of the classic, really elegant look that they have. Again, this one likes to go a little bit drier in between waterings, and this one can be great outdoors in sort of a low light area. If you're wanting something tall to put in the center of your annual arrangement, then you can choose that guy there. Next up, we have a fig. This fig is called a rubber plant, and it's a Ficus Robusta, and I love the bright red tips on it in contrast with the burgundy leaves. Now with these guys here, it's really important to remember that plants, they photosynthesize. So what that means is the sun is giving them nutrients. So every once in a while in our homes, we don't have the wind and the rain to clean off the leaves, so it's important we do that for them. So taking a damp rag and just wiping the leaves off will help our plants photosynthesize a lot better. Next up here is the Dracaena. Dracaena family is a very large family. I've got a dragon tree down below here, but this one's a lemon lime. I love the bright colors of this. Lower light plant, again you'll see a little bit of the browning on the tips. That's nothing to be alarmed of, that's just from the chlorine in our water. You can even just take a little pair of scissors and trim that off, and you will be fine. So this guy here, low light, he will love you forever. Next up I have another fig. Oh, this guy's pretty heavy, but we'll pull him up here. This guy here is called an alley fig. And alley fig, just like your Benjamin figs, they just have a longer leaf on them. They do not like to be moved. And as our seasons change and our daylight hours decrease, just like our leaves fall off our trees, you will find alley will do that as well. So they usually will drop about a third of their leaves seasonally every year. And then as soon as the daylight starts increasing, about now to end of March, you'll start to see a lot more new growth on your plant. So alleys are great for that bright light area. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we're going to plant up a little succulent arrangement. Succulents, again, are such a huge trend in gardening, especially in a tropical garden. But what I love from them is they require very little care. So you're watering these maybe about twice a month. And remember that little rule, don't water them until their leaves feel flimsy like your earlobe or the tip of your nose. So to get started, this pot does not have drainage in it. So what we want to do is we want to start off by putting some rock in the bottom. This will allow for some drainage. And then we're going to add some charcoal. This is some horticulture charcoal. Just going to put a scoop in there And then we're going to top dress with some soil just on top of that, just to fill the pot up about halfway, just like so. Then we are going to take the plants out of the pots, and those succulents, they don't have a very big root system, so when you pull them out of the pot, sometimes half the soil might stay in the pot, and that's fine. And then we're just going to sort of set the plants in, and as we're setting them in, we're going to backfill with soil around the plant, just like so. Then take this next little guy. This one's called a mistletoe cactus. And if we have a little bit too much soil around the edge, we'll just sort of peel that off. As you can see, cactus and succulents have very, very, very little root system. So you can pack a lot into a little container. And then something I love to do with my succulent containers is I like to leave open space. So I might plant them just like so, leave that one nice and open, backfill with some soil, and then I might top dress with a little bit of rock. And I like to do this especially with cactus and succulents because you can tell by how their leaves feel if they need water, so you don't need to necessarily stick your fingers in the soil. So I'm going to stick some nice white rock on the top here. Just to finish it off. It's just a decorative aquarium rock that I'm putting on here. And then I'll maybe put some larger stones in just as decoration. And voila, I'm finished. Now a little trick is I like to have a little paintbrush on hand. And I'll just dust off my container and also my little succulent babies. And then I'm finished. For watering this guy, I'll sometimes even take a turkey baster and give it a little bit of water with a turkey baster. They do not need a lot of water. So when I'm watering, I'm not pouring cups of water at a time. It's more like a couple tablespoons, maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons at a time of water. So this beautiful arrangement, nice and easy to do, easy gift, and it will thrive all summer long. You can put it out on a patio or enjoy it in your home in a bright area. So we're just going to set that succulent arrangement over there. And we're going to get into when is it time to repot your plants. Now there's a few signs that your plant might need to be repotted. Number one, like this guy here, he's starting to produce so many babies, they're starting to burst out the side of the pot. You might see roots coming out the bottom of your pot or the top of your pot. Now, what size of pot should I go into? I don't want to go too big of a pot. That pot holds a lot of moisture, the bigger pot that you are in. So I usually will go about no bigger than 1 to 2 inches bigger in diameter at a time. So this guy here, I can do one of two things. I can pull him out of this pot and I can divide him up. So I can take his little roots and just sort of take a knife and I can start cutting around and dividing him up, and then I have about 2 different ones. I can put half of the plant back into this size of pot, or I can put the whole thing into a larger pot, and then that plant will be nicely transplanted into a larger pot. So knowing when your plants need a new home is a really good idea to check your plants, check your root systems, make sure they have enough space to grow and thrive. I hope you've learned a little bit about houseplant care here today, and that you will keep growing and grow and nurture this new plant hobby that you've started.